Good morning, everybody, and a very warm welcome to you as you join me this morning, Malcolm Duncan, for our continued exploration of the book of Daniel. I pray that as we take some time this morning to think about this, that you will be encouraged, but you'll also be sober in your judgment and realize that our days are short. We're going to be reading again from Daniel chapter 7, from verses 1 through to 8, and we'll be taking some time this morning to compare it to an earlier reference that Daniel has made to a similar picture, in some ways similar, in some ways very distinctive, in Daniel chapter 2, as we begin to unpack some of the imagery related to the beasts that we see in Daniel chapter 7. Let's pray, and then we will read. Father, thank you that you are with us. Thank you that you see us and you know us and you understand us. Thank you that you love us. And thank you that it is your intention through your word to speak to us, as we said last week, to encourage us personally, to speak to us prophetically, and to show us the principles of your kingdom. I pray to this morning that as we look at your word together, you'd open our hearts and you'd remind us of what it is you want to say to us in Jesus' holy and precious name. Amen. So, first of all, let's read together from Daniel chapter 7, and we're going to read from verses 1 through to 8 together. As you know, I read from the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible. In the first year of King Belshazzar's of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head as he lay in bed. Then he wrote down the dream. I, Daniel, saw in my vision by night the four winds of heaven, stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then, as I watched, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a human being, and a human mind was given to it. Another beast appeared, a second one, that looked like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 tusks in its mouth among its teeth, and was told, arise, devour many bodies. After this, as I watched, another appeared like a leopard. The beast had 4 wings of a bird on its back and 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this, I saw in the visions by night a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful, and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth, and was devouring, breaking in pieces, and stamping what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that preceded it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns when another horn appeared, a little one, coming up amongst them to make room for it. 3 of the earlier horns were plucked up by the roots. There were eyes like human eyes in this horn, and a mouth speaking arrogantly. And as I watched, thrones were set in place, and an ancient one took his throne. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, and its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and flowed from his presence. 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood attending him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. I watched then because of the noise of the arrogant words that the horn was speaking. And as I watched, the beast was put to death, and its body destroyed, and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. As I watched in the night visions, I saw one like a human being coming with the clouds of heaven, and he came to the Ancient One and was presented before him. To him was given dominion and glory and kingship, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion and shall not pass away, and his kingship is one that shall never be destroyed. God always blesses the public reading of his inspired and his infallible word. I'm just moving things around here because I've got some notes that I want to use this morning as we take a few moments to explore this. Now, we have already taken time to think about the reason God speaks to us prophetically, that he speaks to warn us, he speaks to guard us, he speaks to guide us. And last week, I said that this passage, Daniel chapter 7 particularly, begins, if you like, a new season in Daniel, a new kind of language, not entirely new. It mirrors some of the things that are in the earlier parts of Daniel, but there's an intensity around the prophetic pictures that Daniel is given. He's given 4 from here until the end of the book. There's some people think only spoke to the time. I said that last week. Some people think spoke to that time in the time of Jesus. I also said that. Others, like myself, believe that it speaks then and to every generation, and specifically speaks toward the end of time also, about some of the challenges and warnings that we need to be aware of as God prepares to bring everything in his created world to a great climax. It's worth setting the context here that Daniel is not written chronologically. So actually, you may not know, but this is written, this vision that Daniel has here takes place before Daniel is thrown into the lion's den, probably about 10 years before. And what we see here is a sense in which Daniel is grouping what he has to say according to why he is saying it. And this vision, alongside the other visions that he sees in the rest of the book as we have it, are records of God's warnings and judgment and his promises of care and provision, rather than simply one thing that happened after the other. In the first year of King Belshazzar of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head that lay as he lay in his bed. We're told in chapter 7, verse 1. This is about a decade before Daniel is thrown into the lion's den and has to face the challenges that he deals with there. And it tells us that, I beg your pardon, this is about a decade before. Yeah, that's right. And I think that one of the challenges for us in reading Daniel effectively is reading it slowly and reading it, comparing each section to each section. Now here in Daniel chapter 7, we have this picture, as I told you last week, of 4 beasts that are arising out of the sea or out of the land. And each of them has a particular significance. And they're very similar. The vision, anyway, is in some ways very similar to the vision that Daniel has in chapter 2, except there are some differences. In Daniel chapter 2, you will remember that Daniel is given the vision of the dream that Nebuchadnezzar has been having. So Daniel isn't the first to receive it. He's given it. But Nebuchadnezzar has been having it. And in that dream, Nebuchadnezzar sees this great person standing, made of 4 different bits of metal and with feet of clay and bronze and iron, and there's gold in the vision and bronze and lots of different things. But in the vision that Daniel has in chapter 7, we see 4 beasts, not an animal, not a person. Now, yeah, I'm so sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I think I may have hit a button on my desk. I'll just make sure that you can all still hear me. Can you? Give me a little message. Looking for a little comment that just lets me know that you're still here. Yes, great, super. Thank you so much, Alexandra. You're always so faithful in letting me know that you're there. All of my screens went blank there for a moment. I think I must have leaned on my mouse because I've got so many bits of paper out. So in Daniel chapter 2, we have the vision of a man or a person, a human, made of gold and silver and so forth. But in Daniel chapter 4, we have a vision of 4 animals emerging from the sea. Now, I'm only going to tell you what I think is the interpretation here. There are others that will disagree with me, but there are a lot of people that would agree with me. I think that both Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 4 explain or demonstrate the same thing, but for different reasons. And they both demonstrate those four empires that I talked to you about a lot, but I want to say a bit more about that this morning. They demonstrate the empire of the Babylonians, then the Medes and Persians, then the Macedonians, the Greeks, then the Romans. But that fourth empire of the Romans is something I want to return to. Now, go back with me for a moment to Daniel chapter 2. And I want you to read something with me. It's chapter 2, verse 38. And we read these words. We'll read from verse 36 to set the context. This was the dream. Daniel has told Nebuchadnezzar the dream that he had. Now we will tell you, the king, its interpretation. You, O king, the king of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the might, and the glory, into whose hand he has given human beings, wherever he lives, wherever they live, the wild animals of the field and the birds of the air, and whom he has established as ruler over them all. You are the head of gold. And after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to yours, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over the whole earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, just as iron crushes and smashes everything. It shall crush and shatter all these. As you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom, but some of the strength of iron shall be in it, as you saw the iron mixed with the clay. As the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle, etc., etc. But the important thing is that in chapter 2, in verses 36, 37, and 38, this great creature that emerges, this great human form, is named. Nebuchadnezzar is named. You, O king, are the head. Your empire is the top bit. Out of you will flow another empire, the Medes and the Persians. After them will flow another empire, the Greeks. And after them will come this fourth empire, the Romans. Now, in each of those visions, Daniel is clear and explains and names them. In Daniel chapter 7, why would God give another vision of the same kingdoms? Well, firstly, because it's another king. Nebuchadnezzar is no longer the one that is there. God is now speaking to another king who has perhaps lost sight of what he wanted to say. But secondly, the vision is similar, but also different. Because in the vision in Daniel chapter 7, it is animals that are seen. The great eagle, the leopard, the lion, and the bear. And I think that there is a reason for that. You see, Daniel chapter 7 in some ways is not needed to explain who these empires are, but it is explaining what these empires will be like. And there are some really interesting things that we see. Now, first of all, I want to just give you some comparisons, some things that are similar in both Daniel chapter 7 and some things that are different between chapter 7 and chapter 2. This isn't my work. This is from an author called David Gooding, who wrote a book about Daniel in 1981. In chapter 2, there's a survey of the whole course of Gentile imperial power. The same is true of chapter 7. In chapter 2, 4 empires appear in the form of a man. In chapter 7, the 4 empires appear in the form of wild beasts. In chapter 2, there's a fatal weakness, an incoherent mixture of iron and clay in the feet that leads to the destruction of the last kingdom. In chapter 7, we don't see weakness. Instead, we see increasing aggression and animosity and dehumanizing, a lack of morals, a hideous strength, a frightening mixture of animal destructiveness with human intelligence. In chapter 2, the whole man is destroyed by the stone that is cut by the divine power from the mountain, as you read it. Excuse me. And in chapter 7, this final beast, this fourth empire, is destroyed, and universal domination is given to a figure called the Son of Man. And then in chapter 2, we read that the kingdom is set up and it will never end. So actually, between chapter 2 and chapter 7, although they're both referring to the same thing, in chapter 2, we see some human kindness and compassion in these empires. In chapter 7, we don't. The beasts that we see get increasingly aggressive. We go from an eagle to and a lion and a leopard. We see this increasing aggression in chapter 7. Go back to chapter 7, and you'll see it with me in the kind of beasts that are seen. Verse 3, 4 great beasts came out of the sea. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then, as I watched, its wings were plucked off. Perhaps that means it becomes more gentle, more human, more kind, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a human. See, becoming more human and being given a human mind. Is that because Nebuchadnezzar's empire, the Babylonians, became more compassionate toward the end of their existence? Another beast appeared, a second one that looked like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 tusks in its mouth among its teeth, and was told, "Arise and devour many bodies." Some people think the idea of it being raised up on its side, the Medo-Persian Empire, is because in the end, one side of that empire, the Persian side, had more power and overcame the Mede side and overtook it. After this, I watched, and another appeared like a leopard, an increasing aggression. The beast had 4 wings of a bird on its back and 4 heads. Alexander the Great's Macedonian Empire is here. And after he died, his kingdom was divided between 4 kings equally, 4 heads, 4 wings of a bird, and dominion was given to it. It was over more of the world than any empire before it. After this, I saw in the visions of the night a 4th beast. In Daniel 7, it isn't clear. It's not named as the Roman Empire, although one could argue that it is inferred, but I think it means more than that, and we'll see why in a moment. Terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth, as did the 4th part of the vision in Daniel chapter 7. Iron is involved, and it was devouring and breaking in pieces, similar language, and stamping what was left with its feet. It was different from all the other beasts that preceded it, and it had 10 horns. I was considering the horns when another horn appeared, a little one coming up amongst them to make room for it. 3 of the earlier horns were plucked up by the roots. These were like eyes, like humans in the form of a mouth, speaking arrogantly. The 4th beast in Daniel 7 is increasingly aggressive. It is dehumanized. It is violent, and it is destructive. So I think that we are seeing the 2 visions linked, but that there are different reasons for them being given in the way that they are. And in Daniel chapter 7, the verses that we're looking at now, God is warning Daniel and reminding Belshazzar that empires come and go and will be defeated, and that the Babylonian Empire, replaced by the Medo-Persian Empire, will itself be replaced by the Macedonian Empire, and that will be replaced by another empire. And the picture is that that empire itself will be overturned and replaced by the Son of Man, who will reign forever and ever. Now, the other thing to mention is, if you look at Daniel chapter 7 for a moment, in verse 2, verse 7, verse 13, and verse 15, there's a kind of linking language. Look at verse 2, Daniel 7. I saw in my vision by night. Look at verse 7. After this, I saw in the visions by night a 4th beast. Look at verse 13. You have to jump all the way through to verse 13. As I watched in the night visions, I saw one like a human being. And then verse 15, as for me, Daniel, my spirit was troubled within me. So this vision is split up with this I saw. Now, what do I say about it now? Now we get to a part of this vision which is both frightening, and it should be, and reassuring, and it certainly should be that. First of all, these kingdoms come and go, but the 4th kingdom that Daniel sees is a terrible, terrible kingdom. And this vision that he sees of this kingdom then being overturned by one like the Son of Man is not something that he reads lightly. It's not something that he reads easily. Look at verse 15 again. After he's seen all of this and the kingdom being established and so forth, he says, "As for me, Daniel, my spirit was troubled within me, and the visions of my head terrified me. I approached one of the attendants to ask him the truth concerning all this. So he said that he would disclose to me the interpretation of the matter. As for these 4 great beasts, 4 kings shall rise out of the earth. But the holy ones of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever and ever and ever. Then I desired to know the truth concerning the 4th beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrifying, with its teeth of iron and claws of bronze, and which devoured and broke in pieces, and stamped what was left with its feet. And concerning the 10 horns that were on its head, and concerning the other horn that came up, and to make room for which 3 of them fell out. The horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke arrogantly, and that seemed greater than the others. As I looked, this horn made war with the holy ones, and was prevailing over them, until the Ancient One came. Then judgment was given for the holy ones of the Most High, and the time arrived when the holy ones gained possession of the kingdom." This is what he said. "As for the 4th beast, there shall be a 4th kingdom on earth that shall be different from all the other kingdoms. It shall devour the whole earth and trample it down and break it to pieces. As for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall rise, and another shall rise after them. This one shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, shall wear out the holy ones of the Most High, and shall attempt to change the sacred seasons in the law. And they shall be given into his power for a time, 2 times, and half a time. Then the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, to be consumed and totally destroyed. The kingship and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the holy ones of the Most High. Their kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey them." Here the account ends. "As for me, Daniel, my thoughts greatly terrified me, and my face turned pale, but I kept the matter in my mind." So there are a couple of things. First of all, this vision is so terrifying for Daniel that he goes pale. It frightens him. It is so serious. It is so significant that it frightens him. The second is, what we see happening in Daniel chapter 7 is these 3 kingdoms named arising: the Babylonian kingdom, the Medo-Persian kingdom, and the Greek or the Macedonian kingdom. Now, I think it is fitting to assume that the 4th kingdom refers to the Roman Empire, but it also refers to more. I'm going to come back to that next week. I can't say too much about it now. I'm going to say a bit, but not too much. It also refers to more, because when Daniel has his interpretation given, he is given information that has not yet happened. That there are 10 kings that will arise, and that these 10 kings will be usurped by 1 king. In fact, they won't be usurped. They will willingly give their power to this 1 king, who will have dominion over the whole earth, and who will wage war against the saints, and will seek to disrupt the times of religious festival, the times of religious celebration, the very nature of religion itself, and will destroy and kill the holy ones. No wonder Daniel is pale. But that kingdom itself will also be defeated by the holy ones and by the Ancient of Days. So, in one sense, this is a terrifying vision, because think about this with me for a moment. Up to this point, each time we have seen a king that has come against somebody in Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego at the beginning, and Daniel earlier on in the story, although not earlier on chronologically, although Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said to the king, "Throw us into the fiery furnace, and if God wants to, he will deliver us, and if he doesn't, he won't," they were delivered. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were delivered from this power. Daniel was delivered from this power. In this vision, Daniel sees believers being martyred. He sees them being killed. He sees them ostensibly being destroyed. That's the terrifying bit, I think. That this last vision is so powerful that he sees destruction and death all around him. But, and it's a massive but, he sees this empire itself overcome by the coming of the Son of Man, by the Ancient of Days taking his seat on the throne. And the ultimate victory is given to God's people. The ultimate dominion is given to the kingdom of heaven. The ultimate reign and rule and kingdom of God is not established by human hands. It's established by divine intervention. And we read of that twice in Daniel 7. The first time we read it is in verses 9 through to 14. And Daniel chapter 7, verses 9 to 14 are probably some of the most important verses in the entire Bible. Because what we see in this is a divine court. There is a divine book being opened. The Ancient of Days, on a throne of fire with the wheels of fire, sits enthroned in charge of the court. And the Son of Man, one like the Son of Man, appears to bring judgment and to execute it on the earth. Let me read it to you. As I watched, verse 13, in the night visions, I saw one like a human being coming with the clouds of heaven. And he came to the Ancient One and was presented before him. To him was given dominion and glory and kingship, and that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion that shall not pass away, and his kingship is one that shall never be destroyed. When Daniel has that vision explained to him later on in the chapter, here's what we read in verse 27. The kingship and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole earth shall be given to the people of the Most High, the holy ones of the Most High, and their kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey them. Here the account ends. So although it's a terrifying thought, Daniel sees that this last empire will kill believers, will kill the saints, will destroy them. But he also sees that this last kingdom will be overcome by the coming of the Son of Man. Now, I'm going to unpack the coming of the Son of Man a great deal more next week with you. But here I want to talk just for a few moments about the issue of judgment. Because what Daniel sees is the rising of a fourth empire that will utterly, utterly attack the people of God. Now, it is true that the Roman Empire does that. And it is true that the Roman Empire, more than ever, attacks the church, because there was no church here in this passage. But with the coming of the Son of Man, with the coming of Christ, which happened in the Roman Empire, we see this empire reacting strongly against it and beginning to kill and martyr Christians. And by the time we get to the New Testament, we have people, when John is writing, for example, like Nero, who is killing Christians, throwing them into the Colosseum, dipping them in tar, setting them on fire, beheading them, crucifying them, doing everything that he can to blame the Christians, the followers of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, for everything that's gone wrong in the Roman Empire. However, it would be true to say that therefore must be this fourth kingdom. And there's much of what Daniel sees here that happens in that context, but not all of it. So is it possible, I think it is, that Daniel's interest in the fourth kingdom, which is not answered, he doesn't get all the answers that he wants, also means that we won't get all the answers that we want, and that this fourth kingdom could refer to every kingdom in every generation that seeks to usurp and destroy Christ. It could refer to the Nazis. It could refer to Stalinism. It could refer to Pol Pot. It could refer to any violent regime that puts itself in the place of God. I think it can. But could it also refer to a specific kingdom at the end of time that will seek to obliterate Christianity? Could it refer to something that happens at the very end of time, when all of the kingdoms of the earth are forever brought in line with God's purposes? I think it does. And I think what we see here is a prophecy that warns every generation. And because of its accuracy with the Medes, with the Babylonians, with the Greeks, and with the Romans, we can rely on it. But it also points forward to a time at the end of time when God, by his power and by his grace, is going to overcome the final and last enemy and establish his kingdom forever? And is it possible that because we see the coming of the Son of Man in the Roman Empire, that empire is named without being named here, specifically identified, and Jesus as the Son of Man establishes his kingdom and rule and reign, but that rule and reign will be resisted on earth all the way through human history until the very last moments of history, when in the last years we will see a specific set of circumstances take place that Daniel is also referring to. Not everybody thinks that is true, but I do. I honestly do think that that is true. And I think that we need to learn to see that in God's purposes and plans, prophecy can be used in this way. At the very center, and I know that's a lot, but there is more for us to think about in the weeks that lie ahead. That's why I told you that we're going to do this slowly. I want to stop and ask you to reflect with me on the question of judgment here. What Daniel sees in this Son of Man coming is judgment of the whole earth, and it terrifies him because judgment is a terrifying thing, but it isn't always terrifying. It's also a promise of vindication and victory. I want to read to you something from the Psalms. If you have your Bible in front of you, can you go back to Psalm 96? I'm just going to get it. I like to do this because if it takes me this length of time to find a passage, it'll take you that length of time too. Psalm 96, I'm going to read to you from verses 10 to 13. And this is a praise to God who comes in judgment. But listen to verses 10 to 13. Say among the nations, the Lord is king. The world is firmly established. It shall never be moved. He will judge the peoples with equity. Let the heavens be glad and let the earth rejoice. Let the sea roar and all that fills it. Let the field exult and everything in it. Then shall all the trees of the forest sing for joy before the Lord, for he is coming. For he is coming to judge the earth. He will judge the world with righteousness and the people with his truth. So in Psalm 96, judgment is something that causes great joy in God's people, and so it should. Great hope. Because whilst it is true that believers are slaughtered, whilst it is true that right now there are women and men who are your sisters and brothers and my sisters and brothers imprisoned, denied their human rights, some of them are killed because of their faith, it is not true to say that God doesn't see that. And it isn't true to say that the people that do it will not be held accountable. You see, at the heart of Daniel chapter 7, alongside the mysterious pictures of visions and beasts and animals and kingdoms, which we are going to continue to explore slowly and carefully, there are three fundamental realities that happen. First of all, God moves in judgment. Secondly, he moves in judgment through the coming of a specific person, the Son of Man. And thirdly, the kingdom that the Son of Man establishes is given to the saints, and they will rule forever with him. Those are our three great hopes. That our Savior, our God, our Creator, sees everything that happens in every moment in history. Every wrong thing done, every wrong thing spoken, every evil plan hatched. And while some of them look as if they get away with it, 6 million Jews killed in the Second World War, Holocaust after Holocaust, pogrom after pogrom, while some of it is mysterious and inexplicable and we cannot explain why it happens, none of it is unnoticed. Secondly, we see that there is a specific agency given to one person who comes from the Ancient of Days, and he is described as the Son of Man. And I will show you next week in the New Testament how Jesus uses this phrase to describe himself and how important it is that we understand that this Son of Man of Daniel is God incarnate, and it is Jesus Christ. So not only will God move in judgment, but God will move in judgment through his Son, Jesus Christ, who is the Son of Man. And thirdly, his coming establishes a kingdom that can never be broken, can never be dethroned, can never be removed, and which will ultimately be shared with his people, the saints, the people of God. Those three things are massively encouraging for you and for me today. And I know we have to wade through complicated images and pictures and visions, and we have to work out dates, and we see things like the Babylonian Empire and the Medo-Persian Empire and the Macedonian Empire and the Roman Empire and this mysterious fourth empire, which is Rome, but is also more than Rome. But underneath that, read the structure of this story, read the structure of this vision that Daniel has. God moves in judgment. That judgment is brought by the Son of Man, and that brings vindication to God's people, establishes God's kingdom, and it is a dominion that can never be broken, a reign that can never be removed, a rule that will last forever and will be shared with God's people. That's you and me. That's why we can have great hope. God gives these pictures and visions to warn us, to prepare us, but also to help us to warn the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that, until we see the Son of Man appearing in the clouds with all of his glory. We've only just begun Daniel 7, and I'm praying that you will really enjoy the rest of what I have to say. I know this one's been longer. May God bless you, encourage you, and strengthen you. And may you know, whatever you're facing today, whatever empire you're facing, and I know some believers join me here through virtual private networks in nations where they're not allowed to be Christians. Whatever you're facing, whatever despot is trying to destroy you, God has the last word. And judgment is a terrible thing, but it's also a promise of vindication and hope to God's people. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you at 11 in Dundonald and 6:30. May God richly bless you. Bye for now.